It is a year where the world is being hit by a pandemic that consists of a acute respiratory virus which is rapidly spread, a virus with no verified treatment, a virus that does not yet have a vaccine, and a virus that hits all of society indiscriminately, all sectors of society. In some, it spreads more rapidly, and in other parts of the population, it is highly lethal. To face something of this nature, the world had no handbooks, and no country was sufficiently prepared to face these conditions. We know that this pandemic brings serious social and economic effects, because to face up to its exponential growth, we've had to take draconian measures which lead to preventive isolation of almost all the population, closing borders, stopping large gatherings, stopping trade. And these consequences of facing the pandemic are being felt. We see it in unemployment, poverty, in a fall of trade activity. But without doubt, this exceptional situation is putting us before the great challenge of our history. There cannot be a dilemma between the protection of health and life and social and economic development of our countries. So the work we have to undertake together is to protect health and life and at the same time beat coronavirus. And we win insofar as we have distancing, discipline, collaboration and generosity, to the extent that we take public policies that are focused properly and that we're able to undertake testing that we can trace, and that above all that we set up a good culture amongst our citizens. So we have to face this pandemic with optimism, and that means that we have to do so with respect over its lethal nature, but also bearing in mind that if we are sufficiently disciplined and we work together and we are sufficiently joined, we'll be able to face this with success. That's what we've tried to do in Colombia. We've taken difficult, drastic decisions, but this has helped us to ensure that the number of deaths per million inhabitants in our country is favorable. We have also been able to see that the measures for the protection of sectors which have greater fatality rates have meant that we've been able to improve our capacities, and we've been able to widen our intensive care services, and we've been able to help the health sector to face the ravages of this pandemic. Of course, we are aware that we have other challenges, the challenge of reactivating the economy, protecting the most vulnerable, and influencing through teaching so that we all behave in a better way. This is the major challenge of our times. And I believe that the World Health Organization is called on to ensure that within multilateralism, all of us make our efforts so that we don't think as individuals, but we work as a major collective, so that we develop rapidly a vaccine and that we find treatments and we have serious and rigorous epidemiological control, so where we work with science as our ally. Because I have no doubts that when we live with this, we might understand that Mother Earth is speaking to us, and that we must think about not returning to how we were before, but that we come out better as a society, where we understand that protecting health is a fundamental right for all, and where the linking and working together of all governments will make the difference. And that's why I call on the World Health Organization and all the member states to face this COVID-19 with a better sense of international cooperation in order to protect those who most need it. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. We are pleased to have with us His Excellency President Mario Abdo Benitez, President of the Republic of Paraguay. Excelencia, le doy la palabra.
Señora Presidenta.
Thank you, Madam President of the Assembly, Member States. Director General Dr. Tedros. This year, 2020, is no doubt going to be remembered as a turning point in the history of mankind. A year in which we had to face a pandemic which forced us to evaluate and re-evaluate what we are, how we live, our families, our countries, everything. This is one of those challenges that comes along occasionally in life, but which makes us grow in the end. Yes, the coronavirus is difficult and will be difficult for everybody, but it might also help us to improve as a race and a society as we have to take these very difficult decisions which are going to face us now. We've certainly been trying to do that in Paraguay. Once we had 2 positive cases registered in our country, we took a decision which some people at the time found to be over the top. However, we knew the situation on the ground in our country, we knew our people, and we knew the position of our health system. And we also had the opportunity to look at what was happening in countries where the pandemic was already more developed and which yet had great capacity in their health systems, and we saw that they had found it as difficult as we were otherwise going to find it to be ready to tackle the pandemic. Yes, it was drastic to close down schools, to shut borders, and put many, many people into quarantine, but that was what our strategy was. We took a decision which we knew, as I say, was going to have a major impact on and for our people. But at the same time, it convinced them of the need to obey the health-related instructions they were being given. No decision that we took actually would have had any effect at all unless we had united support behind us offered from our people. And that's what we had. Our people understood how difficult the situation was. They were supportive, they were disciplined, and they were even enthusiastic in following the orders and instructions that we were issuing. That in itself has meant the beginning of a change to a different way of living. It isn't easy, I can assure you, to tell your people that they can't come back to their own country unless they follow instructions. COVID-19 put us in a very difficult position. We had to say to our people, sorry, you're going to have to wait where you are, you can't come home yet. We saw what happened, that this situation ended up separating children from their parents, the child in one country, the parents in another, and it's not easy to issue instructions that lead to that. At the same time, although of course we saw objections, we also saw the mental strength and resilience of our people being demonstrated. This pandemic has also put us, some people think, at a crossroads, one where leaders have to determine which road to take, the road to promote health or the road to protect the economy. Actually, you have to go in 2 directions at once because you have to do both. And that's difficult for leaders too. What we've tried to do is provide protection and support to the poorest and the most vulnerable in our country. We've given subsidies and financial assistance for a certain period of time to at least 60% of them. We've tried to continue with public works which can give people jobs, carried out, of course, in conditions of strict social distancing, and I'm happy to say that we haven't seen a single case of COVID-19 transmitted in that particular sector. The same is true of agriculture and food production. We have to guarantee food security, so we were unable to close those down. That was another difficult decision to take, and I repeat, we took the decisions, but we knew they wouldn't work unless we had support from our people. Fortunately, we got it. People not only supported us, they supported each other. They held out a helping hand to those who desperately needed it. I'd like to express my recognition, my gratitude, and my admiration to the ordinary citizens of our countries, the emergency services, the health workers, and all the unnamed people who realized that people around them were worse off and in need and were happy to take their last piece of bread and give it to them if necessary. Despite the physical distance that has to separate us for the time being, we've managed to remain close by using creativity and technology, and in the midst of so much tragedy, we've managed to realize, I think, the value of things as simple as a handshake or a hug, things that we used to take for granted, things that we used to really not notice when we did them automatically, and now we can't, and they've taken on a great deal more importance. We've also realized, I think, that all of us are equal. The virus certainly thinks we're all equal. It's taught us that, and it's also taught us that all of us can do something to help all of us find a solution to the problems we now face. We've learned that we're not in isolation, even if you see what I mean when we are, that we're all components of a whole. What we do affects our neighbors, changes the lives of families, and if we don't do it right, can cost lives. If we do it right, of course, it can save them. We've understood that a global challenge, a global disaster requires a global response in which all nations participate, and as they participate, put the value of human life right at the center of whatever they're doing. What we do now will be remembered and re-evaluated by future generations. That's something important to bear in mind. We have an opportunity now, once and for all, to learn the lessons involved in this situation and not go backwards once the situation is over. What we need to do is go forwards, rebuild the world, build a better world, a stronger world, a more resilient world, and a more decent world where we have the proper value placed on health, health services, and the individual. Once we have those things, then we'll be able to do a better job of preventing and dealing with future disasters, disease outbreaks, and or climate change. When the children of our children sit in their history classes and study this chapter of the human race's existence on this planet, what we want is for them to remember that the best decisions are the decisions that people take when they respect the right values. If they do that, then we'll have healed a lot of people, a lot of societies, and the world as a whole. Thank you very much, and God bless.
Excellency, I would like to mention that your country is currently chairing Mercosur. I shall now invite the Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Bhutan, His Excellency Dr. Lotai Tshering, to make his statement.
Madam President, Ministers, and distinguished delegates, greetings from the Himalayan Kingdom of Bhutan. I have the honor to convey best wishes of my King, our Queen, and the people of Bhutan. As a medical professional, I am always overjoyed to be interacting with the health fraternity within the country and beyond. We are living in extraordinary times as we all deal with the crushing weight of this pandemic. But as much as there are challenges, we are inspired by the incredible stories of kindness and bravery of our healthcare workers across the globe. I would also like to offer my deepest condolences to everyone who have lost their loved ones to this pandemic. For Bhutan, we always believed that a nation can only grow on strong foundations of a good healthcare system. As the pandemic came closer to us, our preparations resolved around the comprehensive healthcare system Bhutan always had. For decades, alongside education, our kings have always ensured free and quality healthcare for all Bhutanese. And in times like this, we are once again asked to reflect on the efforts and importance we have placed on public healthcare system, mainly the universal health coverage for all. Such pandemics are a bitter reminder that healthcare system of a nation determines that of the entire globe, which is why it is time for leaders to come together and discuss global health problem as a common objective. This is where I see WHO taking a strong lead in redefining our approach to global healthcare system. We are grateful for the timely support from Southeast Asia Regional Health Emergency Fund. I am particularly happy with the efficient leadership of Dr. Poonam, the Regional Director of CERO WHO and our WHO country office in Bhutan. We are very fortunate to have our kings who have always emphasized on the importance of free and quality health care for all. And now, His Majesty the King is personally spearheading the combat against the disease. All the 21 positive cases that we have until now are picked up from the government-sponsored quarantine facilities. We ensure strict surveillance and testing during the 21 days mandatory quarantine period. But again, we are not compromising on our preparations should we experience a local transmission. I understand it will be a while before we come out of COVID-19. Here I would like to urge the participants to discuss measures to ensure that more vulnerable countries continue to have access to diagnostic tools, PPEs, drugs, and of course the vaccine when it actually becomes available. As we put all our resources and energy behind COVID-19, let us also remind ourselves not to compromise on the routine health services. We may not realize now, but what if the damages on other health conditions like NCDs, infectious diseases, and vaccination programs become unmanageable when COVID-19 recedes? This is equally worrying. That is why my government is always reminded of the routine health services as we combat the pandemic. Like all other governments, we are put to test by this pandemic. But Bhutan, although resource constrained, will do our part. As I end, I would like to share my King's concern that this health crisis has already put immense burden on our economy, and if you are not mindful and strategic, it could create social disruption. In anticipation of such challenges, let us all work together to avert such crises, just as fighting COVID-19 requires all of us to work together. I look forward to your cooperation. I send prayers for my King and people of Bhutan. Thank you very much, and Karinche.
Thank you, Excellency. J'invite à présent son Excellence.
Now I invite His Excellency Pedro Sanchez Perez Castejón, the President of the Government of Spain, to take the floor. Your Excellency, I give you the floor. Ladies and gentlemen, I am extremely pleased to be able to participate at the 73rd World Health Assembly. It is an event every year, but this year it has an extraordinary importance given the very unprecedented situations that humanity faces. This should be a moment for renewing our organization, and that we renew our strong commitment to the organization. Spain believes firmly that the only response to COVID-19 is a multilateral one. This pandemic has highlighted our vulnerability and made it clear that we need one another. That's why, more than ever, we must be united, because united, without any doubt, we are stronger in the face of COVID-19. In 1948, our leaders set up the World Health Organization, and now, 72 years later, today's leaders, we must give it the tools to strengthen its leadership. We have learnt many lessons through this COVID-19 crisis. Unfortunately, it has been forced on us, and with a major cost on a human and emotional level, with the irreplaceable loss of many of our compatriots. And I would like to pay homage to the victims of this illness, of this pandemic, and express my condolences to their families and friends. So I support the World Health Organization and Dr. Tedros so that they lead and build on these lessons learnt, so that they can help us to be better prepared to future challenges. We have to work with an integrated vision which looks at the multi-sectoral spheres of health, so that we can reach the third Sustainable Development Goal that Spain is committed to promote the well-being of all in all ages. For Spain, universal health coverage is the keystone for having effective, resilient and quality healthcare systems which respond to health emergencies, but also for the permanent protection of health. Director General, Spain trusts that the WHO will continue to play its leadership role, and we are convinced that if we work together, we will be able to emerge stronger from this crisis. Thank you.
Je vous remercie, Excellence.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I invite His Excellency, Mr. Giuseppe Conte, the President of Ministers of Italy, to take the floor.
Madam President, Mr. Director General, Excellencies, this 73rd World Health Assembly comes at a crucial time, in the middle of our fight against the threat of the COVID-19 pandemic. The virus has changed our lives in ways that we never could imagine only a few months ago. We are living an unprecedented global crisis, a crisis that knows no borders, spares no region. We can only overcome it all together through solidarity, cooperation, and mutual accountability. From the very beginning of the pandemic, Italy has promoted the strengthening of global leadership and international solidarity to manage the emergency and accelerate long-term, sustainable solutions guided by science, research, and medicine. The outcome of this assembly displays the value of our cooperation and establishes a framework for an effective response. Let's face it, we were not entirely prepared for such a huge global crisis. We have shown great resilience, but now we are called to learn our lessons, and for sure we have lessons to learn. We have to strengthen early warning mechanism, exchange of information, identification of best practice to improve the international community's pandemic preparedness. Since Italy's first call for an international alliance to fight COVID-19, together with the WHO, global health actors and key partner countries, we have launched the ACT Tools Accelerator, a global platform to speed up efforts for vaccine, therapeutics, and diagnostics tools, and ensure universal and equitable access to these life-saving treatments. We should leave no one behind. As a country committed to effective multilateralism, Italy believes that we should enhance our global health architecture, including by strengthening the role of the WHO. Just a few months ago, we commemorated the 40th anniversary of smallpox eradication, to which WHO's contribution was decisive. We commend the organization's long-standing work to safeguard people's health, often carried out under very difficult circumstances. Global health has been a consistent, permanent priority for my country, especially in the framework of international development cooperation. And this crisis risks to derail the historic global goals achieved so far in the health sector and to disrupt our pathway toward SDG 3 and the whole 2030 agenda, especially in Africa. Therefore, Italy believes that increasing our support to the most vulnerable countries much needed, and be reassured that Italy will take the opportunity to promote the common goals of global health high in the agenda of its upcoming presidency of the G20 in 2021. Italy has been one of the first and most severely hit countries by this pandemic. In March, we remember very well, we needed to take drastic measures to contain the spread of the virus. After 2 months, epidemiological data are encouraging. They confirm that our collective efforts and sacrifices have paid off. We are now easing most restrictions, yet keeping rigorous safety measures for every social and commercial activity. We continue to strengthen our health infrastructure, increasing intensive care units and hiring doctors and health workers. We have broadened testing and developed a nationwide monitoring plan in synergy with our local authorities. We are entering the phase 2 with cautious optimism and a sense of responsibility. We know that our struggle is far from being over. To that end, we still need each other. Global health is our shared priority and must be our shared responsibility. Today, more than ever, we believe that together we will make it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Excellency. It is my pleasure to now invite the Prime Minister of Tuvalu, His Excellency Kausea Natano. You have the floor, Excellency.
Madam President, Director General, Excellencies, it is indeed an honor for me, as Prime Minister of Tuvalu and Chairman of the Pacific Island Forum, to deliver this message during the closing of the 75th session of the World Health Assembly. Let me begin by expressing my condolences to the families of those who lost their loved ones. I would also like to take this opportunity to salute health workers around the world who are working tirelessly to treat and protect us from this virus. Tuvalu remains COVID-19 free, but that does not mean that our preparedness and response planning efforts are lesser than countries that confirm cases of the virus. In fact, it is a testament that we have been preparing and responding effectively since January. Our world faces unprecedented crisis like no other. The COVID-19 pandemic is both a global health emergency and a human crisis that impacts our livelihoods and deepens mistrust around the world. During this pandemic, we are learning that the virus does not respect national borders. We are all vulnerable, and that shared vulnerability reveals our common humanity. We therefore fully support the WHO extends an invitation to include Taiwan to be part of the WHA. In order to respond to COVID-19 pandemic, Tuvalu and other Pacific Island countries invoked the Picadava Declaration that emphasizes a regional approach. This has allowed for the establishment of the Pacific Humanitarian Pathway that facilitates a swift and effective delivery of medical supplies, equipment, and personnel to our member countries. Excellencies and distinguished delegates, global and regional crises of this kind remind us of the importance of collective efforts and giving a helping hand to others. So my plea to the world community, let us all leave our differences aside and work together to eliminate this virus from the surface of the earth. COVID-19 has made us all vulnerable, and it has also reaffirmed the 2030 Agenda and the Paris Agreement as essential global commitment to strengthen and enhance our resilience. Our commitment to COVID-19 is born out of the belief that multilateralism and regional cooperation remains the best way of addressing our common crisis of pandemics and climates. I know that you had fruitful outcome in your deliberation, and I would like to conclude by wishing you all the best, and God bless you all. Whaftai tuvalu mo te atu.
Thank you very much, Excellency. We have a small technical issue with Vietnam. We are waiting for His Excellency Nguyen Xuan Phuc, the Prime Minister of the Socialist Republic of Vietnam. In the meantime, I will give the floor to Her Excellency, Mrs. Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission. You have the floor, Excellency.
Dear Director General Dr. Tedros, dear friends of the World Health Organization, in the last 3 months we all have seen how crucial it is to join forces for our individual and collective health. Only 2 weeks after the first coronavirus outbreak, laboratories across the world, from South Korea to Germany, were able to work on the full sequence of the coronavirus genome. And in a matter of days, they developed a test for the virus. That was possible because of the share of information on a global scale. In times of a global pandemic, international cooperation should be a no-brainer. Now is the time to act. We need to fight and defeat coronavirus in all continents. We need tests, medicines, and a vaccine, and we need them to be affordable for all. Last month, you called on all nations to join forces so that a cure and a vaccine could not only be developed but distributed all across the world. The European Union responded immediately. We hosted a virtual pledging conference, raising $8 billion. We put Europe's convening power at the service of the United Nations system and of all humankind. This will accelerate the development of much-needed vaccines and therapeutics, and we will see to it that once developed, they can be deployed universally and be available to all. A coronavirus vaccine should not be a luxury for chosen few, but a universal common good. Let me thank the co-sponsors and all of you for our good cooperation. In times like these, the greatest act of courage is to play as a team. This does not mean that once the dust will have settled and once we have delivered on our pledge to beat this virus, we should not look into ways to modernize the WHO, to see what should be done for the WHO to continue to live up to the new challenges. Because we need multilateral approaches. But let us for now focus on our most immediate challenge. This is the time for cooperation. This is the time for science and solidarity. This is the time for all humanity to rally around a common cause, and you can count on Europe to always play for the team.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much. As I understand it, we still have a small technical difficulty trying to connect with Vietnam. We're going to show a video for a while we try and get our connection with Vietnam up and running. If I could just ask you to be patient. Thank you.
thank you very much for your patience. It seems that now we are, sorry. Thank you very much for your patience. In order to save your time, we're going now to go to the right of reply, and I will hand the floor back to you, Madam President, and we will come back to Vietnam as soon as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam. In order to move along, it is being proposed that we proceed to the rights of reply. I'm advised that there are 4 delegations requesting rights of reply: the Russian Federation, China, Cuba, and the United States of America. However, before I give the floor to the delegations in the order I just listed, I would like to remind delegates of what I would have conveyed last evening. May I kindly request that in delivering a right of reply, delegations be as brief as possible, taking into account that at this meeting, interventions themselves are limited to 2 minutes. If delegations could kindly interpret the word brief relative to the time allotted for interventions themselves, it would be greatly appreciated. And finally, if there are subsequent requests by delegations for additional spoken rights of reply concerning the same matter as previous replies, may I kindly request delegations to limit such spoken statements to 30 seconds or less. I hope delegations will understand that these requests are made in our common interests in the good order of our proceedings and to help us move things along. I now give the floor to the Russian Federation. You now have the floor. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, we were not expecting this kind of a statement by the Ukrainian delegation. The interpreter apologizes. This is inaudible.
Преодоление последствий пандемии Украину заботит лишь то, на кого переложить ответственность за
Apologies from the interpreter, Chairman.
властей
Madam Speaker,
отсюда голословные абсолютно беспочвенные обвинения в адрес
excuse me, the delegate of...
нелепо.
Hello. Thank you, the delegate from the Russian Federation. My apologies for interrupting. I'm advised that they're having some difficulties with the audio.
Начать сначала?
Give me
Do you want me to start again?
1 moment, please. The distinguished delegate from the Russian Federation, I'm advised that apparently they're hearing an echo. There may be a speaker in the room, and they're asking if you might perhaps turn it down or turn it off, and that would help with the audio. Could you please do that, and then we will proceed with your
Мы
intervention.
попытались корректировать звук, госпожа председатель.
Sorry, the delegate said something about the sound, but the interpreter doesn't know what. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but I understand they're getting an echo. If there is a speaker on, can you please turn it off and then proceed with your intervention?
Сейчас по-прежнему.
Is that any better?
Saying that's much better. Can you please proceed?
Начинаю. Благодарю вас, господин.
Thank you, Chairman. Our delegation has taken the floor in order to react to what was said by the delegation of Ukraine. Unfortunately, we did not expect to hear this kind of a statement. We thought we were discussing controlling and fighting the virus. Unfortunately, Ukraine appears to be trying to put the responsibility for the failures of the Ukrainian authorities onto other countries. I'm sorry, Chairman. I really am, but I can't do this. I can't hear it. Thank you.
My apologies again. My apologies again, Honorable Delegate from the Russian Federation. I understand from the interpreters that they are still having a difficulty hearing you. I'm advised that we'll have to come back to you. We'll come back to you. We'll come back to you. We'll give the floor to the other speakers, and then we'll come back to you. I will now give the floor to China. The Honorable Delegate from China, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sorry, we cannot hear the Chinese speaker. Thank you, Madam Chair. The unanimous decision of the Virtual Assembly is not to consider Taiwan-related proposals, which fully reflects the clear stand of the international community and WHO in affirming the One China principle. However, there are still a few countries determined to plead for the Taiwan authorities, seriously violating relevant UN and WHO resolutions and undermining global anti-epidemic efforts. China solemnly protests and firmly opposes this behavior. It's been proven the so-called gap in the international epidemic prevention in Taiwan is a purely political pretext, which is doomed to fail. Madam Chair, the virus is still raging. In this context, our top priority is to unite and cooperate to save lives and continuously support the WHO's leading role. We hope that some countries can step up cooperation with the international community in a responsible manner so as to jointly defeat the pandemic. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, distinguished delegate from China. I now give the floor to the distinguished delegate from Cuba.
Sí, bien. Gracias, señor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In its reply yesterday, the delegation of the United States deliberately, dishonestly, the government exaggerates the figures that it is declaring for the licenses for the export to Cuba, and they have nothing to do with the requests made by our country for requirements for importation, nor with the trade transactions in reality. The blockade dates 60 years now. In the area of health, it has led to more than $3 billion. Acquiring medical equipment and supplies in a regular manner have to be acquired from far away, or we have to do without them when serving the health of the people of Cuba. It is untrue to say that in this period, with this administration that has cruelly intensified these restrictive measures, the blockade, in accordance with the Convention Against Genocide, is a genocidal act. They should follow the United Nations and the calls to remove the measures against countries such as Cuba, but it has fallen on deaf ears until now. Finally, the interpreter apologizes. The sound is causing difficulties. The interpreter apologizes.
Thank you. I will now give the floor to the distinguished delegate from the United States of America. You have the floor. Is the United States connected, please?
Thank you, Madam President. Under item 3, at the President's suggestion, the United States has submitted a written explanation of position regarding the COVID-19 response resolution. However, in reaction to the unhelpful explanation of positions delivered by Iran, Syria, and Cuba, which were far from the spirit of solidarity, the United States will exercise its right of reply. The United States has and continues to offer humanitarian assistance to the Iranian, Syrian, and many other people, including Cubans, to help address the coronavirus outbreak. The United States maintains broad authorizations that allow for the sale of food, agricultural commodities, medicine, and medical devices by U.S. persons or from the United States to Iran, Syria, and many other places. Similar exceptions apply for foreign persons providing aid. Our sanctions are not an obstacle to providing humanitarian aid to Iran or other countries. As Secretary of State Pompeo noted in his March 31st remarks to the press, with respect to the goods needed for countries to resolve the coronavirus problem, they were not sanctioned, they are not sanctioned, and they will not be sanctioned. And finally, in reaction to the statement by China, we join countless others in the international community who today have called on the WHO to extend an invitation to Taiwan to the WHA. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. I will return the floor to the Russian Federation to see if the audio is a bit better now. Madam, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. We took the floor, as I said, in order to use our right to reply relating to the statement which was made previously by the delegation of Ukraine. Unfortunately, we didn't actually expect such a statement because it was somewhat distant from the basic topic we were discussing, the fight against the coronavirus. It didn't seem to have much to do with that. It was more a question of transferring the responsibility of the failure of the actions of the Ukrainian authorities onto somebody else's shoulders. I'm sorry, Chairman. According to the statement of the Ukrainian delegation, from what we see of it, it's simply an act of provocation and an attempt to bring political issues onto the agenda of the Assembly. This is destructive behavior and it's not acceptable. We would like to say that the Russian Federation is ready for fruitful and direct cooperation with the organization and its member states on issues within its remit. Thank you.
I understand from the Secretariat we have further requests from the floor. Requests for reply. I give the floor to the distinguished delegate from Ukraine.
Thank you, Madam President. First of all, I would like to draw attention the Russian delegation that the main statement of the delegation of Ukraine, covering in particular the response to the COVID-19 pandemic, according to the provided by the WHO Secretariat options yesterday, was posted on the official WHA website. I, of course, strongly reject some Russian false and misleading narratives concerning the developments in my country. In my previous statement on the agenda item 6, I have not politicized at all the work of the 73rd WHA. I have made points which have direct relevance to the WHO mandate, healthcare and humanitarian fields. Russia must provide the WHO the objective picture and real relevant data about the situation on the temporary occupied territories of Ukraine. I call on the Russian Federation to provide full and comprehensive access for the ICRC representatives, international humanitarian agencies, as well as medical workers to the population of the temporary occupied territories of Ukraine to deliver qualified medical examination, treatment, and humanitarian assistance. Russia must fully guarantee the right to life and access to health care for illegally detained Ukrainians. I thank you, Madam President.
I thank the distinguished delegate from Ukraine. I now give the floor to the distinguished delegate of Syria. You now have the floor.
Hello?
The distinguished delegate from Syria, you have the floor now.
Hello? Yes.
Please proceed, sir.
Thank you, Madam President. I find myself obliged to take the floor to respond to the comments just made by the representative of the United States regarding unilateral economic measures imposed on my country, as well as on other countries, and their repercussions on national efforts to effectively cope with the challenges posed by COVID-19. The reference to the so-called humanitarian exemptions of those sanctions is in fact no more than a pretext to justify the imposition of those unilateral measures. I would like to invite the distinguished delegate from the US and other colleagues to revert to a report of the rapporteur of UCMs in the Human Rights Council about his visit to Syria in 2018, where he raised the issue of the humanitarian exemptions and confirmed that these are in fact non-existent. And in fact, we believe that the best service the US could do for the humanitarian situation in Syria starts by lifting those unjustified and immoral sanctions rather than seeking to impose new packages of sanctions while we are in the midst of facing COVID-19 challenge and its accompanying repercussions. Thank you, Madam President.
I'd like to thank the distinguished delegate. I understand that the Honorable Delegate of China wishes to take the floor to exercise a further right of reply. I wish to remind delegates that in the event of a sequence of rights of reply between member states, each replying to the other, the practice in the WHO and in other UN organizations is to allow each member state two intervening, or should I say additional interventions. Thank you. I'm being corrected by the Secretariat. They allowed two interventions in the exercise of rights of reply. In this way, such sequences can be managed fairly and transparently without unduly disrupting the meeting. Furthermore, I would like to remind delegations of my request yesterday, and I think earlier today, that any subsequent requests for additional interventions in the exercise of the right of reply concerning the same matter should kindly be limited to 30 seconds or less. Accordingly, I now give the floor to the Honorable Delegate of China to exercise a second right of reply. So you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This video conference unanimously decided not to examine the issue of Taiwan so that to guarantee the smooth running of the meeting. However, just now, the US delegate is still doing political hype. This conduct is not acceptable. China firmly opposed to it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, and that concludes the rights of reply. And I understand, I'm reminded that we still have to have the statement from Vietnam. I turn the floor over to Madam Bocause. I'm going to get it right. Just bear with me.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam President. Thank you. Indeed, we now have one more statement. Accueillons donc à présent.
His Excellency Nguyen Quan Phuc, Prime Minister of the Socialist Republic of Vietnam. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Madam President, Mr. Director General, ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to speak at the 73rd WHA. At the outset, allow me to express my sincere sympathy to the governments and peoples around the world for the immense losses caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. I would also like to extend my appreciation to the health workers, medical personnel, and WHO staff who are selflessly engaged in the valiant fight against the pandemic to protect the health and well-being of all. Ladies and gentlemen, this year's WHA is particularly significant. It takes place amid the pandemic that exerts unprecedentedly far-reaching impacts on all countries. More than ever before, all countries need to strengthen international solidarity and support multilateral cooperation, in particularly the UN and the WHO. As the leading global health organization, WHO should continue offering countries scientific expertise, fostering collaboration and mutual understanding, coordinating international efforts, mobilizing common resources so as to respond to the pandemic effectively. Protecting its people's health and lives is a top duty of every state. We must proactively strengthen the preparedness and resilience of our healthcare system, step up international cooperation, and enhance information and experience exchange. In the fight against the pandemic, we must ensure that everyone in every country and territory have access to vaccine and medication. I should stress the WHO and developed countries should also continue providing practical assistance to developing countries in this endeavor. Alongside the efforts to address the immense consequences of the virus, we need a post-COVID-19 development plan that provides support for businesses to resume, ensuring social welfare for citizens, especially the poor and the vulnerable, so that no one is left behind. We need to strengthen cooperation to sustain the supply chain, sustain international economic connectivity and financial market stability. Ensuring a peaceful environment is thus crucial for these tasks. Ladies and gentlemen, conscious of the danger of the pandemic from early on, Vietnam has fought the pandemic as though an enemy. We adopted the whole government approach, where the healthcare system, scientists, and the armed forces all join in implementing quarantine measures, combining contagion control, contact tracing and testing, and treatment. The government accepted short-term economic losses in order to safeguard the public health and safety. These policies and measures have been well supported by the public. As of today, Vietnam, a nation of nearly 100 million people, deeply integrated into the region and the world, only records more than 320 cases with 0 fatality. Today is the 33rd day without community spread in our country. Having essentially kept the pandemic under control, Vietnam is moving on to a new normal, engaging in economic recovery and development, while never allowing complacency in fighting the disease. In the spirit of cooperation and sharing in times of hardship, the government, businesses, and people of Vietnam have provided timely and practical assistance including made in Vietnam masks and medical equipment, and shared our experience with various countries, especially countries heavily affected by the virus. At the same time, Vietnam has made financial contributions, although modest, to the WHO's COVID-19 response fund as the 2020 ASEAN chair and a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council for the term 2020-2021. Vietnam has hosted and joined numerous discussions and efforts towards a common voice, put forth initiatives to promote collective actions in combating the pandemic, offering assistance to the people, and promoting post-pandemic economic recovery. Vietnam is confident that in face of the most serious challenge in the founding,
Việt Nam tin tưởng rằng trước thách thức nghiêm trọng nhất kể từ khi thành lập Liên Hợp Quốc và tổ chức y tế thế giới này, cộng đồng quốc tế sẽ tiếp tục phát huy ý chí và sức mạnh của mỗi dân tộc, cũng như tinh thần đoàn kết, hợp tác quốc tế mạnh mẽ để cùng vượt qua, cùng xây dựng một tương lai tốt đẹp hơn cho một quốc gia và một người dân.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for your intervention. This concludes our list of high-level guests. Let me thank them all again for their participation. I now hand the floor back to you, Madam President.
Thank you. Finally, I invite the Health Assembly to consider the proposed decision contained in documents A73/34 on suspending the 73rd World Health Assembly until a resumed session later in 2020. Does the Health Assembly accept this proposal? I understand that in the absence of any request to take the floor, I will consider that the Health Assembly agrees to adopt the decision. The decision is hereby adopted. Honorable delegates, this completes our consideration of the agenda items. At this time, I would now like to invite Dr. Tedros for any final remarks. So you have the floor.
I'm from Bahama. Thank you, Madam President. President Duque Marquez of Colombia, President Benitez of Paraguay, Prime Minister Shering of Bhutan, Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez of Spain, Prime Minister Conte of Italy, Prime Minister Natano of Tuvalu, Prime Minister New Senfo of Vietnam, and President von der Leyen of the European Commission, Excellencies, my dear colleagues and friends. Last year, I had the honor of visiting several islands in the Pacific, including Fiji, Tahiti, Tuvalu, and Tonga, where I was welcomed by a choir of nurses. When we originally planned this year's World Health Assembly, we invited that choir from Tonga, choir of nurses and midwives, to perform and to mark the International Year of the Nurse and the Midwife. COVID-19 has deprived us of that privilege. But today, I'm wearing this shirt from Tonga, which I got actually from the minister, as a gesture of thanks and solidarity with our friends from the Pacific. Of course, our president is from the Bahamas, and I think because of the cultural similarities, my shirt also represents the Caribbean. So I'd like to dedicate my closing speech, actually, to the choirs that we were expecting to join us from Tonga. And you might know, during my visit, I was even given a Tongan name. And my Tongan name is Vai Toi Moyu Mapavia. So this is a typical Tongan name, and so honored to have a Tongan name. But to my Tongan friends and the rest of the Pacific, we hope you will be able to join us at the next year's assembly and do what we plan to do. And now, to the rest of my speech, I offer my deep thanks to the many member states who have expressed their support and solidarity at this assembly and throughout the pandemic. I have been impressed and inspired by the commitment of so many countries to fighting the virus and saving lives. I also thank the regional directors for their messages, which were played last night, and for their continuing efforts to support countries. I thank member states for adopting the resolution which calls for an independent and comprehensive evaluation of the international response, including but not limited to WHO's performance. As I said yesterday, I will initiate such an evaluation at the earliest appropriate moment. We welcome any initiative to strengthen global health security and to strengthen WHO and to be better safe. As always, WHO remains fully committed to transparency, accountability, and continuous improvement. We want accountability more than anyone. And I thank Dr. Felicity Harvey and the members of the Independent Oversight Advisory Committee for their continuous work to review WHO's work in health emergencies, and in particular for their report on the COVID-19 response published yesterday that covers from the start of the outbreak until the start of the pandemic until April. So checking and learning our lessons is in WHO's DNA. And that's what this report shows. And I hope the recommendations of the independent committee will be taken seriously by our member states. And some of the recommendations are to WHO, and we will take our share also seriously. WHO's focus now is fighting the pandemic with every tool at our disposal. Our focus is on saving lives. At the end of the day, what matters is life. That should be at the center of everything we do and everything we say. I have been heartened by the way countries have shared experiences and best practices through our regular member state briefings and at this assembly. We will continue providing strategic leadership to coordinate the global response and support the efforts by the countries. We will continue providing the world with epidemiological information and analysis. We will continue to keep the world informed and give people and communities the information they need to keep themselves and each other safe. We will continue shipping diagnostics, personal protective equipment, and other medical supplies all over the world. We will continue bringing together leading experts from around the world to develop technical advice based on the best science. We will continue driving research and development to develop evidence about vaccines, diagnostics, and therapeutics. We will continue working with countries and all relevant partners to ensure equitable access to the tools to prevent, detect, and treat COVID-19. We will continue supporting countries to prepare and respond. And we will continue working with countries to sustain essential health services. We will continue to work day and night to support the most vulnerable countries and populations. We will continue supporting countries to achieve the 3 billion targets and the Sustainable Development Goals. And we will continue supporting countries to build resilient health systems based on primary health care to progress towards our shared goal of universal health coverage. My brothers and sisters, dear colleagues and friends, COVID-19 has robbed us of people we love. It has robbed us of lives and livelihoods. It has shaken the foundations of our world. It threatens to tear at the fabric of international cooperation. But it has also reminded us that for all our differences, we are one human race. And we are stronger together. We may speak different languages, but we share the same DNA. We may adhere to different phases, but we share the same aspirations for a peaceful and harmonious world. From east to west, north to south, everybody wants peace and development and health. Nothing else. That's what human beings want. That's what humanity wants. We may have different cultures and traditions, but we share the same planet. For everything COVID-19 has taken from us, it has also given us something, a reminder of what really matters, and the opportunity to forge a common future. Dark and difficult days may lie ahead, but guided by science together, we will overcome. Let hope be the antidote to fear. Let solidarity be the antidote to division. Let our shared humanity be the antidote to our shared threat. Now, more than ever, thank you. Shishe. Merci beaucoup. Spasiba. Muchas gracias. And to our Muslim brothers and sisters who are fasting, shukran jazilan, and we wish you Eid Mubarak. Thank you so much. Together we will overcome this challenge. Nothing will be difficult to address when the human spirit wills it. I thank you. And thank you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your support. Thank you. Thank you for the success of the Assembly. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
I would like to thank Dr. Tedros for his remarks. Thank you, sir. We've had a very eventful 2 days, and I will now make some brief closing remarks. Director General Dr. Tedros, honorable ministers, heads of delegation, ladies and gentlemen, it is a distinct honor for my country, the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, and a privilege for me personally to have served as your president for the 73rd Assembly during the past 2 days. Allow me to congratulate you all on a truly historic assembly that has been exceptional in so many ways. The COVID-19 pandemic has necessitated, for the first time, the virtual meeting of this assembly. Your physical absence from the meeting hall and the number of speakers who addressed the assembly speak volumes to the far-reaching impacts of this disease. As president, I am proud of every delegation for your flexibility, patience, and resolve as we all stayed the course, working together in new ways. I am overwhelmed and heartened by your support. I am so proud of how each and every one of you conducted yourselves in this virtual environment and expressed their sincere passion to strive for a healthier, safer, and more resilient world. As we suspend this assembly, we know the huge challenge that faces us all and the looming threat of complacency. We must remain vigilant. Indeed, the public health community has overcome challenges in the past, and we can and we will do it again, but we must continue to work together, supporting neighbors, and sharing resources in the spirit of solidarity and global community. Vice Presidents, thank you for your support in guiding this assembly. His Excellency, Mr. Li Song, People's Republic of China, Mrs. Jacqueline Lydia Makulu, Congo, Mr. Roberto Shabata, San Marino, Dr. Akamram Eltoum, Sudan, Dr. Viraj Tenchiraro and Satyam. I think I got it right, but if I didn't, no slight intended, but thank you. The good doctors from Thailand, I must thank the interpreters. They did a phenomenal job. Thank you.
You're welcome, Chairman. Thank you.
Without you, we could not be one united team working together, understanding the concerns of each member state that made an intervention. All WHO staff, thank you to all who have worked tirelessly to prepare for and support this assembly, including governing bodies, legal, conference services, and the IT staff, for your extraordinary efforts this year to connect us with our colleagues from around the world. I would also like to thank the WHO staff in regional and country offices for your extraordinary engagement for this year's assembly. Honorable delegations, thank you for your hard work, your patience, your cooperation. I wish you continued strength in your efforts to respond to COVID-19. Dr. Tedros, my deepest appreciation for your steadfast leadership in these unprecedented times. I look forward to seeing you all soon and hopefully meeting you in person at the resumed session of the Assembly later this year. I now formally declare the 73rd World Health Assembly suspended.
So, Madam President, this is for your wonderful leadership. And with respect and appreciation from myself and the whole staff here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and this one, WHO, again, with appreciation and respect.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much for all your support.
We can't, huh?
Couldn't do it without your support.
I have to say, it's so nice to have you.
Thank you.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, honorable ministers, excellencies, and distinguished delegates. The Assembly is called to order. Before we start, may I ask all those delegations having raised their hands prior to the meeting to lower them now. And many thanks for your cooperation. Before we start formally, on behalf of the Secretariat, I would like to apologize for some of the technical issues we experienced yesterday. We're working them out, and we just need your patience and understanding. This is a new process for us all. Now, let me begin with a brief word about rights of reply. If a right of reply is requested during today's meeting, I would propose to give the floor to the delegation concerned when we open item 9, closure of the Assembly, rather than wait until the very end of the meeting in order to avoid disrupting the suspension of the Assembly. I trust that this would be acceptable to all concerned. We will now turn to item 6 on the election of the Executive Board. Regarding item 6, Circular Letter 15.2020, which addressed this item, was distributed yesterday to all delegations. As noted therein, an objection was received from a member state in connection with the list of candidates. Fortunately, I can report to you that following informal consultations among member states, it is my understanding that the delegation of the member state concerned will not block consensus on the list of candidates we are about to consider. In this connection, please allow me to express appreciation for the goodwill of all concerned in respect of this matter. Accordingly, I draw your attention to the list of 10 members, which has been formally circulated to all member states prior to this meeting. If elected, these 10 members would provide a balanced distribution of the board as a whole. These members are in the English alphabetical order: Botswana, Colombia, Ghana, Guinea-Bissau, India, Madagascar, Oman, Republic of Korea, Russian Federation, United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. May I therefore take it that there is no objection to the Assembly proceeding in accordance with the rules of procedure and the special procedures to elect these 10 members as proposed. Okay, I see no objection. I see no objection. I therefore declare the 10 members elected. The election of the 10 members will be duly recorded in the records of the Health Assembly. Before we proceed further, I understand that the delegation of Ukraine wishes to take the floor on this matter. I therefore give the floor to the Honorable Delegate of Ukraine. You have the floor.
Madam President, Director General, Excellencies, colleagues, Ukraine has already informed the WHO Secretariat on its position regarding the candidature of the Russian Federation to the EB. At the same time, recognizing the importance of the uninterrupted functioning of the WHO under these unique circumstances caused by the COVID-19, Ukraine has decided not to block consensus. Nevertheless, Ukraine dissociates itself from the consensus on the candidature of the Russian Federation. The reasons are obvious. The Russian Federation has been constantly violating norms and principles of international law with regard to sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine, including the demands of UNGA resolutions, territorial integrity of Ukraine, situation of human rights in the Autonomous Republic of Crimea and the city of Sevastopol, Ukraine, as well as problem of the militarization of the Autonomous Republic of Crimea and the city of Sevastopol, Ukraine, as well as parts of the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov. The Russian aggression against Ukraine has led to a significant degradation of the healthcare system in the temporary occupied territories of Ukraine. The Russian occupation administrations in Crimea and Donbass conceal the data about the situation with the coronavirus spread and manipulate their statistic on identified COVID-19 cases. Russia's violations of international law and its obligations as the occupying power make it impossible for Ukraine to provide medical assistance directly to the population of the temporary occupied areas. Aid from international community has also been significantly impeded due to continued violations of the ceasefire regime by the Russian occupying forces, as well as the closure of access by the occupation administrations for the UN agencies, other international humanitarian organizations. Russia deliberately ignores complaints about the poor health conditions of the Ukrainian hostages illegally detained by it, even when their symptoms are similar to COVID-19. I hope that these points will be duly taken into account while considering the situations that require WHO's special attention. The full text of the statement will be posted at the WHA website. I thank you.
I thank the delegation of Ukraine. The efforts to remain brief are appreciated. I understand that there are no requests for the floor at this time. Thank you for the cooperation and understanding of all. We will now return to item 3 to hear the the statements by delegations which are provided under this item. And before I hand the floor over to the Secretariat, I would like to apologize to delegations yesterday who we may have had to interrupt statements given the length of the statement. Yesterday was a long day for all. The length of time for allotted statements were previously agreed by member states, and we sought the cooperation of all delegations in abiding by the length of time agreed. I recognize that some interventions were made by honorable ministers. I also recognize that the session is an important one for member states to address concerns that are particularly sensitive given the topic under discussion. However, I would like to urge honorable delegates who may be making statements during the course of discussion on this item to please observe the time limits previously agreed. I will now Thank you. I understand before we proceed with our discussion on item 3 that legal counsel from the Secretariat would like the floor. I will turn the floor over to the legal counsel from the Secretariat. Sir, you have the floor.
Thank you. I think there was there have been a couple of questions about exactly when rights of reply will be afforded to member states following the statement that you made at the beginning, Madam President, and I've been asked to clarify when that would be. In accordance with the rules of the meeting, rights of reply will normally be given at the end of the meeting. We indicated that that would be during item 9. Item 9 will be opened, and then we'll move to item 4, which is the invited guests, and then item 9 will be resumed. My understanding, it will be during the resumed aspect of item 9 that any rights of reply would be issued. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. So, honorable delegates, we will now resume our discussion of item 3, and I will turn over the floor to the Secretariat. Sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. We do have a few countries outstanding to make their statements, and a number of UN agencies as well as an observer. That said, I would invite El Salvador to make their statement. El Salvador, you have the floor, please.
Señor Director General de la Organización Mundial de la Salud, señores ministros.
Director General of the WHO, ministers and health ministry representatives, and representatives of regional health organizations, ladies and gentlemen, El Salvador saw the viral storm clouds that were gathering on the horizon around mid-January. At this time, the disease has really given us a dose of humility and solidarity, because no country can emerge from this emergency without cooperation from everyone. This is why I would like to express our appreciation for the cooperation from many countries and the WHO and PAHO. Our President Nayib Bukele charged us with a single mission to save lives, and that is what we've done, but with great difficulty, and we are moving forward thanks to an integrated vision of our work. I would like to take advantage of this opportunity to refer to specific aspects that are not on any graph, but are part of this fight and are fundamental. This crisis has shown the potential of our work as healthcare workers, since we are on the first line saving people, doctors, nurses, and the support from other stakeholders such as police, army, transport workers, and the business sector and the population has made it possible for us to move forward. And once the pandemic is over, we should not forget this example of solidarity. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. We will now invite the Minister from the Emirates. You have the floor, sir. Sorry, my mistake. Timor-Leste. Timor-Leste, you have the floor, please.
Honorable Chair, His Excellency, Director General of the World Health Organization, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to start by first congratulating the elected President and Vice President of the 73rd session of the World Health Assembly. The inspiring deliberation of Director General Dr. Tedros is a reminder of the global health challenges that need to be addressed, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. As of today, 18 May 2020, we have had 24 confirmed cases of COVID-19. Apart from a few sporadic cases, all others are linked to well-defined clusters within government quarantine facilities. There is currently no evidence of community transmission. We are now approaching the end of the second month of declaration of the state of emergency, which has included travel restriction, managed migration, and other social interventions. Following our first confirmed case on 21st March, Timor-Leste has rapidly transformed from a country with no testing capacity, no identified isolation and quarantine facilities, and a limited surveillance capacity to one with in-country testing. Functional COVID-19 facilities, staff rapidly trained for surveillance and COVID-19 management, a gradual increase in stocks of PPE, capacity for an expanded testing and surveillance strategy over a relatively short period of 5 to 6 weeks. I would like to express my deep gratitude for the support we have received from the World Health Organization in strengthening our COVID-19 response. The technical and logistical support from the country office and the regional office, including the supply of our first batch of PPE and test kits, have been crucial for a rapid and comprehensive response. The Ministry of Health appreciates the continued support from Dr. Rajesh, WHO representative, Timor-Leste, and Dr. Poonam Katrapal Singh, Regional Director, WHO Southeast Asia region. COVID-19 has emphasized the criticality of a strong and resilient health system focused on primary health care as the best response to this and future pandemic. Timor-Leste is firmly committed to providing universal health care to all its people. We pledge to work in solidarity with the international community and are encouraged by the intense collaboration to develop effective vaccines, medicines, and technologies. We appeal to other member states to treat this as a public good and ensure their equitable distribution, as this pandemic is starkly reminding us no country is safe until every country is safe. I thank you.
I thank you, Honorable Minister. We understand Pakistan is not yet ready, so we'll proceed to call on the Emirates, followed by Nicaragua. Honorable Minister from the Emirates, you have the floor, please. We do not seem to have the Emirates online either. We would proceed to Nicaragua, followed by Egypt. Nicaragua, you have the floor, please.
Madam President, we demand that those not be used by any power or organization to exercise political and economic pressure on our country or on any other country. It is unacceptable that while we speak of the unity of the countries in the fight against the countries that fight to maintain their sovereignty and self-determination, as is the case of Nicaragua. Madam President, we advocate the inclusion of Taiwan as a member state of the World Health Assembly. In light of the demand for critical supplies required to confront COVID-19, we ask you to review the principles for equitable access for the countries of the Americas. By adopting the 2030 Agenda of the United Nations, we are committed to advance towards a more equitable and just society, to close the gap within and between nations, especially to be inclusive and universal, not leaving anyone behind, even in times of COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. We would now invite Bosnia-Herzegovina. We understand Egypt and Senegal are not yet ready. So Bosnia, you have the floor. We are unable to connect with Bosnia. We would now move to Palau. You have the floor, to be followed by George, St. Kitts and Nevis. Palau, you have the floor.
Excellencies, honored guests and members of the Assembly, ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by expressing our heartfelt appreciation to Dr. Tedros and the World Health Organization and its staff for the important work they have and continue to do to protect our health and the health of all the peoples of the world. I cannot even begin to imagine the burden that the WHO carries each day, especially during this global pandemic. Earlier this year, when the WHO declared a public health emergency of international concern for this COVID-19, my country felt a grave apprehension as we were not at all prepared to face the devastation of this virus. We did not have the capacity or the infrastructure to respond in the likelihood of the COVID-19 reaching our borders. Similarly to the WHO's call for solidarity amongst all nations, the Republic of Palau and its people value genuine friendships and critical bonds forged out of mutual respect and adoration for life, peace, and unity. Taiwan was the first country to lend Palau a helping hand, followed by many other countries who are present at this assembly. Taiwan and many of our allies knew that our country was vulnerable, so they made tremendous sacrifices to give Palau all the equipment, supplies, and training that it needed in its efforts to prepare and to protect its people. I'm happy to report that my country now has sufficient testing capabilities for COVID-19 and all the necessary supplies and infrastructure to manage the spread of the virus in the event of our first infection. All this was made possible through the simple act of kindness and solidarity from Taiwan and many other member states in this meeting today. Taiwan has not been invited as an observer in the WHA for a while now, but they believe in the WHO's call for solidarity, as do all of us. Despite them being denied participation, they have and continue to help protect the health of many around them. In closing, to all fellow member states, our vision and the mission of the WHO is health for all. Solidarity can only be achieved if and when every single human soul are united. I ask you to consider allowing Taiwan to finally join us as an observer, that we may work together to realize the vision we have all fought for since the formation of WHO. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. I understand we have St. Kitts and Nevis. You have the floor, to be followed by Senegal.
Mr. President, Director General, Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, Honorable Ministers of Health, Heads and members of delegations, I am pleased to address this body to share St. Kitts and Nevis's situation and response to the COVID-19 pandemic. On March 25, 2020, we recorded our first case. Currently, there are 15 confirmed cases with no community transmission. 14 persons have recovered. There are no hospitalizations or deaths. This is a remarkable achievement for a small state in the Western Hemisphere. Our achievement can be attributed to its rigorous public health response and an all-sectors approach with requisite legislation and regulations to guide our response. Early closure of our borders, scrupulous social distancing, meticulous respiratory and hand hygiene practices, and heightened public education awareness programs were key strategies used to contain the spread. Our national response included recapitalization of our health facilities in terms of equipment, physical infrastructure improvements, human resource capacity building through a medical arrangement with Cuba, and training of all frontline personnel in health, business, and national security. Our healthcare system also benefited immensely from the support of the international health agencies such as Pan American Health Organization, PAHO, and the Caribbean Health Agency, CARPHA. Our success in addressing COVID-19 is due in part to our relationship with Taiwan, who has donated considerable sums of PPE in addition to providing early expert review of our national pandemic response plans. Taiwan's own success story stands out for commendation. Just 440 confirmed cases with a minimal community spread in a population of 23 million people. There's much to be learned from Taiwan's handling of the pandemic. As has been done consistently over the years, our country again makes an appeal for Taiwan to be granted full membership status in the WHA. Taiwan has made significant contributions to the world: knowledge and technology transfer, mastery of universal health coverage, and disaster response and mitigation. Mr. President, global success in winning the war against COVID-19 will be largely dependent on strong leadership at all levels: government, the private sector, and civil society. The focus must be on saving lives, safe vaccine development, and recalibration towards a new normal that includes the right to health and life and the dignity for all people. I thank you.
I thank you, Honorable Minister. We would invite Senegal to be followed by Zambia. Senegal, you have the floor. Very well, we don't seem to have Senegal online. We would move to Zambia, followed by Georgia. Zambia, you have the floor. Zambia. We would move on to Georgia, followed by Vanuatu. Georgia, you have the floor, please. We understand Georgia is not available. Could we now move to Vanuatu, followed by Uganda? Do we have Georgia online? Okay, we will go with Vanuatu. We don't seem to have Vanuatu. We will go with Uganda. Honorable Minister, you have the floor. There is no response from the Honorable Minister from Uganda. Could we proceed with Iraq and then Comoros?
أصحاب السعادة المحترمون السيد مدير عام منظمة الصحة العالمية المحترم بالرغم من
Mr. Director General, in spite of the challenges facing Iraq in terms of security, resources and the shortages in health care workers, we were able to confront COVID-19 and were able to involve all sectors. Iraq, since the beginning of the first signs of the crisis, has taken preemptive measures to record all cases. Public gatherings were prohibited, restaurants, cafes and bars were closed, which has enabled us to conserve the capabilities we have within the health sector. Since the beginning of the crisis, we were able to record more than 3,500 cases, and we were able to keep death cases at bay. However, the consequences and the impact have varied on the economic and social sectors. We continue to work under the umbrella of the United Nations and the World Health Organization to make sure that we benefit from the technologies available.
Comoros to be followed by Kiribati. Comoros, you have the floor. We understand Comoros is unable to make a statement. Could we now invite Kiribati, followed by Malawi? Kiribati, you have the floor, please. We don't seem to have Kiribati online. Could we invite Malawi? You have the floor. Unfortunately, we don't have Malawi. Could I now invite Solomon Islands to be followed by Sudan? You have the floor, Solomon Islands. We will proceed to Sudan, followed by the Democratic Republic of Congo. Sudan, you have the floor, please. Very well. We would go with Democratic Republic of Congo to be followed by Pakistan. DRC, you have the floor, please. We don't have Democratic Republic of Congo, could we now invite again Pakistan to be followed by the Emirates? Pakistan, you have the floor, please.
Coordinated, collective, and sustained action among countries and institutions to suppress and mitigate this pandemic. It is clear that no country alone can protect itself from this contagion. Solidarity and unity is therefore vital to tackle morbidity and mortality, to ease burden on the health systems and support national and global economies. Pakistan endorses the statement delivered by the Chinese delegation on the issue of Taiwan. Pakistan fully supports China's efforts to safeguard its sovereignty and territorial integrity. In line with iterations of general treaty, year after year, Pakistan's position is that there is only one China and Taiwan is being an integral part of China. This session of the World Health Assembly is significant in many ways. As the premier global health parliament, it must lend its full support to the ongoing preparedness and response plans and strategies. The Assembly must support growing calls for development and production of COVID-19 related diagnostics, therapeutics, and vaccines that are affordable, equitable, and accessible to all. Our Prime Minister Imran Khan has already given this call for the people's vaccine. Pakistan has reported significantly lower numbers than the initial international projections, especially considering that Pakistan is the fifth largest populous developing country of the world. Despite these numbers, we are not complacent and are taking every possible step to combat this pandemic. We have started trace, test, and quarantine strategy, and we have also launched a We Care campaign for the protection and the support of our frontline health workers. Some of the lessons learned from the outbreak of this pandemic include the need for enhanced investments in national and global pandemic preparedness, detection, and response mechanisms, of core capacities under IHR, and improved pandemic response financing mechanisms. WHO and member states must take this opportunity to start imagining the future of healthcare in post-COVID-19 world. Current political global attention must translate into strengthened essential public health functions in all the countries. And more than ever before, world needs primary healthcare-based universal health coverage. The world is bearing the fallout of this pandemic in so many different ways, including the spread of other diseases, as those have remained relatively unattended over the last 3 months. And at the end, I want to emphasize the need for taking a human rights approach and a collective action for voiceless poor suffering through these tough times. I thank you very much, Mr. President, and I commend the WHO leadership in these tough times. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. We will now invite the Minister from the UAE. You have the floor.
نيابة عن معالي وزير الصحة والرعاية.
On behalf of His Excellency the Minister, I take the opportunity to express my gratitude and thanks to the President of the 73rd WHA, and I would like to congratulate her on her election. I would like to thank Dr. Tedros and all members of the organization for their efforts in helping in confronting COVID-19. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we're meeting at a time when COVID-19 is casting a gloomy shadow and makes it imperative on us to take unprecedented measures. In this regard, the United Arab Emirates has set up a comprehensive emergency system at all levels, led by the government, to respond to this crisis. The Ministry of Health has started more than 1.5 million PCR tests, and this represents one of the highest levels in the entire world. And we continue to conduct 50,000 tests on a daily level. And the most recent report by WHO shows that the United Arab Emirates ranks 9th in the preparedness for dealing with pandemics. We take great pride in having the city of Dubai as a center for warehousing for the provision of medical requirements all over the world. We take great pride in our partnerships and our cooperation with the organization, where we provide a lot of support materially and in kind, and we provide aircraft to transport these contributions. We continue to contribute to international efforts to ensure world security as far as health is concerned. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. We understand Georgia is back online. Georgia, you have the floor, please.
Sehr geehrte Frau Präsidentin.
Honorable President, Honorable Director General, distinguished delegates, I would like to take this opportunity and thank you all for enormous efforts and solidarity in the fight against COVID-19. Starting from January, Georgian government has been taking drastic measures to contain the spread of COVID-19 by employing adequate social distancing measures, mobilizing healthcare facilities, and establishing fever response programs at primary care level. The key factor determining our success was rapid response and prevention. In particular, targeted testing, isolation, and treatment of all possible cases. Technological solutions enabled us to continue teaching at schools and universities and promote online working platforms. We have launched a special application for contact tracing to protect health of every citizen. 20% of our country is occupied. Unfortunately, that is why the central government of Georgia does not have full information about the epidemic situation in the occupied Abkhazia and Skhin Valley regions. The central government of Georgia, with support of UN agency and other international partners, is ready to provide assistance to its citizens in the occupied territories. The joint and highly coordinated actions of the government and relevant institutions enabled us to contain the infection and keep the virus positive cases minimum. The pandemic showed to us once again how important it is to strengthen capacity of primary care services, advance regulatory framework for adequate infection control, and expand our programs for immunization and chronic disease management in order to minimize devastating outcomes of comorbidities. Guidance provided by the WHO through the whole national response has been extremely helpful. We appreciate the opportunity to join the Solidarity Trial and will do our best to contribute towards joint efforts for finding COVID-related solutions. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. May we now invite the Democratic Republic of Congo to take the floor. Honorable Minister, you have the floor, please.
La République démocratique du Congo.
The Democratic Republic of the Congo is pleased to take the floor on the occasion of the 73rd World Health Assembly, which is being held in unusual circumstances marked by the COVID-19 pandemic. The DRC would like to acknowledge the remarkable work performed by the WHO in supporting multiple countries, including mine, in their fight against this horrible disease. My country had its first case on March 10th, 2020, and since then, more than 1,500 cases were confirmed in that province and later in the country. In our response, despite the efforts deployed by my government and our partners, there are major challenges which remain when it comes to diagnosis, care, and surveillance. Also, my country is facing other challenges related to health which require attention from all stakeholders, including Ebola in the eastern part of the country, as well as rubella and polio. There are other diseases which are plaguing our country, but COVID-19 reminded us of how important it is to strengthen and enhance our healthcare system so that it can be resilient and we would be able to move towards universal health coverage. Hence, are stressing the need for international solidarity in order to face the realities in our country. This is why the Democratic Republic of the Congo would like to invite the WHO to work towards specific measures in order to ensure better efforts in order to prepare for world health emergencies, particularly in countries that recurrently face health emergencies, in order to allow for the necessary task teams and forces to carry out the necessary interventions. Thank you very much.
It's the request for the floor from our member states. We understand that a video has been received from the Order of the Malta, but it's not ready yet. We will therefore move to our UN agencies and then come back to Malta when the video is ready, Madam President, if I may. So I'll proceed to call on the World Food Programme. You have the floor, followed by the IOM. World Food Programme, you have the floor, please. Okay, we will move to IOM.
Honourable Chair, Director General, delegates, in the face of COVID-19, the International Organization for Migration reiterates the need for inclusive approaches and calls on countries to combat stigma and address the specific vulnerabilities of migrants while recognizing them as key stakeholders themselves, whether as part of the health workforce fighting this pandemic or as contributors to future socio-economic recovery. As your committed partner on promoting the health of migrants, IOM continues to implement policy and operational measures on the human mobility dimensions of this pandemic, including migration communication campaigns, population mobility mapping, health capacity development at points of entry, and cross-border coordination, while ensuring continuity of care for essential services such as TB, malaria treatments, and routine immunization. Moving forward and respecting UHC principles and international solidarity, we must ensure that migrants, regardless of their legal status, have access to future therapeutics and vaccines, especially in low-resource settings. Thank you.
Thank you very much, IOM. We understand Order of Malta is ready. We will give you the floor, sir.
The Sovereign Order of Malta is contributing to the global response to the COVID-19 pandemic through its worldwide humanitarian action. It is of greatest importance to reaffirm here the necessity for the broadest possible international cooperation between all stakeholders. We wish to commend the WHO leadership in the fight against coronavirus. The vital role played by faith-based institutions in this emergency is being widely acknowledged. WHO recognizes that religious leaders, faith-based organizations and faith communities can play a major role in saving lives and reducing illness related to COVID-19. It published practical considerations and recommendations specifically for them. The Order of Malta has adapted its medico-social activities and centres accordingly. Its hospitals, clinics and ambulance services are fully active. It helped establish field hospitals and provide PPE, respirators and medication to state institutions and hospitals. Maltese International is intensifying hygiene kit distribution and wash programs, especially for displaced persons in camps. Furthermore, the Order's government recently launched the Doctors to Doctors project with the aim to gather on a virtual platform health experts sharing knowledge and strategies. The project is intended to help countries facing socio-political instability, economic challenges, violence and conflicts to deal with the pandemic. The Order has also scaled up its social services, distributing more food, water and medication to elderly, homeless, isolated, disabled and terminally ill persons. Psychological hotlines and online
Thank you, Madam. We will now move to the Africa Union Commission. You have the floor, to be followed by the Commonwealth Secretariat. Thank you. We would invite the Commonwealth to make their statement before the African Union. Commonwealth Secretariat, you have the floor, please.
COVID-19 threatens to set back progress towards our goals of achieving universal health coverage and the Sustainable Development Goals. The Commonwealth is mobilising to tackle this pandemic and its far-reaching economic and social ramifications. Our health ministers last week held their first ever virtual meeting to share best practice and reaffirmed their commitment to a coordinated approach to ensure that none are left behind. I commend to this Assembly the Commonwealth Ministerial Statement issued on behalf of our 54 members, representing 1/3 of humanity. In accordance with the values and principles of the Commonwealth Charter, it commits us to solidarity and mutual support in responding to COVID-19 and the ensuing economic challenges with continued attention to the needs of the most vulnerable in society and to tackling climate change. Our healthcare workers represent so much that is noble and best in humanity. Their shining example of professional dedication and selfless service should illuminate our thinking and the proceedings of this Assembly. This pandemic is affecting every aspect of our human existence, and to fight it, we need a whole-of-government approach. It brings home to us, as never before, the urgent need for multilateral action. I thank Dr. Tedros for his steadfast leadership of the global response through the WHO and pledge our Commonwealth support and continuing multilateral engagement to this fight.
Thank you, Madam. We will now invite the African Union Commission.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Of the chairperson of the African Union Commission, His Excellency Musa Faki Mohammed, and to extend his greetings to WHO and to the Director General of WHO, His Excellency Dr. Tedros Adhanom. Excellencies, the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic has reignited the need for global health solidarity and partnership in order to arrive at collective and decisive solutions that will advance global public health security and safety. We have endorsed our joint continental strategy on COVID-19 and also they have instructed the chairperson of the African Union Commission to establish the anti-COVID-19 response fund. Heads of states and governments, they decided to establish 3 coordinating committees, one for the ministers of health, another committee from the ministers of finance, a 3rd committee from the ministers of transportation. We must work hard to avoid our response to COVID-19 from halting progress towards ending the epidemics of HIV, TB, and malaria, as well as maternal, newborn, and child health, and reversing hard-won gains in mortality and infection rates. The Commission would also like to use the opportunity to express its appreciation to all health workers and allied personnel. We give condolences to those who lost, to the families of those who lost their lives on the front lines of combating and fighting COVID-19. Excellencies, thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Excellency. Could I now invite South Center to take the floor, please?
Excelencias, señor.
Excellencies, delegates, it is an honor to address you on behalf of the South Center, an intergovernmental organization of developing countries, which is an observer here. I would like to focus on 3 specific messages, bearing in mind the time limits. First of all, we should consider all medications, vaccines, diagnostics, and instruments necessary to face this crisis as global public assets, as was recognized by the United Nations last April 24th. Secondly, this is the occasion to rethink this organization, to make it a public, independent organization which would use all of its means of pursuant to its constitution. And also, we need to carry out research so that this research will not only be guided by commercial interest, and it would be focused only on access. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Excellency. Madam President, we've exhausted the list of speakers. We do, however, understand that a member state has asked to speak. We would want to give the floor to the member state, Madagascar, and we'll conclude the consideration of our list. Madagascar, you have the floor, please.
Merci. Merci.
Thank you, Madam President, Director General, ladies and gentlemen, ministers, distinguished delegates. Allow me to congratulate Madam President and the members of your office for leading the work of the 73rd World Health Assembly. We would like to thank the Director General of WHO for his remarkable work and his leadership in improving health around the world, in Africa and in Madagascar. Elected to the Executive Board for 3 years, Madagascar would like to express its gratitude. Our vision with regard to the health policy is based on the principle monitor and intervene. It applies to any disease which has an epidemic potential, including COVID-19. This monitoring includes improving the capacity to detect, for early detection with an alert system with a rapid response possibility. Intervention is based on prevention and provision of treatment in cases. Therefore, an efficient and responsible partnership which is to the benefit of stakeholders should be developed and implemented. I welcome the technical support that WHO has provided to Madagascar. It is up to us to ensure that we can build capacity of our health staff and to ensure the operational health monitoring. Public health is part of the framework for globalization, which allows development of Madagascar. WHO, therefore, is a key partnership for Madagascar in its efforts to achieve the objective of universal health coverage. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Madam President, contrary to my earlier statement, it appears that we do have a few more countries who've taken the liberty to ask for the floor, if I may. Could we now give the floor to Burundi, to be followed by Guinea? Burundi, you have the floor, please. Okay. Could I now call on Serbia to take the floor, please?
Can you hear each other?
Yes, yes, we can hear you, Honourable Minister. Please proceed. Thank you.
Can you hear each other? Very good. Hello?
We can hear you. Please proceed.
Yeah. Dear Madam President, distinguished delegates, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, we are all facing a difficult time. Cooperation with countries, exchanging knowledge and experience, as well as mutual assistance and support is perhaps most important at this moment. Do not let anyone think there are no friends or God forbid there are some enemies, but we all need to fight together against the pandemic caused by the COVID-19 virus. In that sense, we would like to emphasize that the Republic of Serbia has implemented decisive measures in combating and preventing the spread of the virus, representing all the recommendations of the WHO, the international organization, and respect other states' experiences. At all times, the government of the Republic of Serbia has taken care that all measures are justified and aim at saving the largest possible number of its citizens, lives of its citizens. We would like to express our gratitude to the People's Republic of China and the European Union, its member states, and the Russian Federation for their assistance, each in accordance with its capabilities. I'm deeply convinced that in time like this, it is important to leave the victims behind and to focus our energy in fighting the pandemic. The results of the Republic of Serbia in the fight against the virus would never have been so effective if it had not cooperated to exchange the experience with everyone. A joint fight against the pandemic based on the recommendation of the World Health Organization is the only way for us to succeed in defeating the virus. We need to show solidarity and strengthen multilateral cooperation in order to overcome the difficulties we all face together. In this regard, the need to suppress the pandemic actively should take precedence over any political issues and divisions. The answer to the pandemic should be global. No one should be left alone. I do not think only in small countries, But on the contrary, even in EU, interior space, everyone should be taken care of. The Republic of Serbia, as a World Health Organization member state, is highly appreciative of the organization and its active contributor to its work, and firmly believes that any initiatives with the potential to give rise to politicization and divisions within the organization are not to the benefit of an efficient fulfillment of its primary role and mandate. The Republic of Serbia attaches special importance to the work and activities of international organizations in the UN system on the basis of full and consistent adherence to the Charter of the United Nations, norms and principles
Honorable Minister,
of national law, as well as the
Honorable Minister, we will be grateful if you could conclude your statement.
Okay, in this regard, the Republic of Serbia express full support to One China principle as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, for your kind indulgence. We have Guinea-Bissau, and I believe I could yield the floor back to the President after Guinea-Bissau. Guinea-Bissau, you have the floor, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have proceeded our present at the 74th session of the World Health Assembly. Faced with the COVID-19 pandemic, Guinea-Bissau not only joined global initiative under WHO directive, but internally adopted several, among them restrictive measures, personal screening, social distance, and the mandatory use of masks. Created in an interministerial committee involving national and international non-governmental organizations and engaged community in the fight against COVID-19. Prepared an emergency plan to combat pandemic. Creation of quick response team is spread through the country. Provision of appropriate place for medical care and specialized medication include hospitalization in tent and hotel for COVID-19 patients. To date, according to the latest statistical data, the country has 900 cases, 990 cases, including 37 recovered, and 4 deaths in universe of 2.510 tests of a population of 7,100 inhabitants. Given the scale of pandemic and the fragility of our health system, WH support was so crucial in the fight against the pandemic. In this context, the country more than ever needs support of WHO to improve the health system as a whole, implement the emergency plan to fight COVID-19 as well as provide urgently masks, rapid tests, lung ventilator, and other medical equipment to reduce the spread and stop the pandemic. To finalize, Republic of Guinea-Bissau and the Republic Popular of China is a one and indivisible. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. We do understand that the video for the Order of Malta had a technical problem towards the end. We will request that we play that intervention again from where the disruption happened, if possible. If not, we'll play the full video once again. crave your indulgence. We'll play the full video of the order for the Malta once again. Thank you very much, Madam President.
The Sovereign Order of Malta is contributing to the global response to the COVID-19 pandemic through its worldwide humanitarian action. It is of greatest importance to reaffirm here the necessity for the broadest possible international cooperation between all stakeholders. We wish to commend the WHO leadership in the fight against coronavirus. The vital role played by faith-based institutions in this emergency is being widely acknowledged. WHO recognizes that religious leaders, faith-based organizations and faith communities can play a major role in saving lives and reducing illness related to COVID-19. It published practical considerations and recommendations specifically for them. The Order of Malta has adapted its medico-social activities and centers accordingly. Its hospitals, clinics and ambulance services are fully active. It helped establish field hospitals and provide PPE, respirators and medication to state institutions and hospitals. Maltese International is intensifying hygiene kit distribution and wash programs, especially for displaced persons in camps. Furthermore, the Order's government recently launched the Doctors to Doctors project with the aim to gather on a virtual platform health experts sharing knowledge and strategies. The project is intended to help countries facing socio-political instability, economic challenges, violence and conflicts to deal with the pandemic. The Order has also scaled up its social services, distributing more food, water and medication to elderly, homeless, isolated, disabled and terminally ill persons. Psychological hotlines and online support platforms have been established to provide comfort to all those distressed by the situation. A number of countries like Germany, Austria, Hungary, Taiwan and Lebanon supported the works of the Order in fighting COVID-19, both in their countries and in third countries, thus witnessing international solidarity and support where it was mostly needed.
COVID.
Thank you, Madam President. That concludes the list of speakers. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we close the discussion on item 3, I wish to address the small number of states that were unable to make their interventions orally for technical reasons. We've discussed it, and I would like to propose that exceptionally, we invite those member states that were unable to connect to the platform to deliver their speech orally. What we are proposing is that they send the written text of their statement to the Secretariat. That text will be posted on the WHO's website and will be subject to the same provisions as the written statement submitted under paragraph 5 of the special procedures, including that they shall form part of the official records of this session. I think that's the best compromise under the circumstances, and I would indulge member states and their cooperation in this regard. And I understand from the Secretariat that we have come to the end of the list of speakers. I now propose that we turn to the draft resolution on COVID-19 response proposed under this agenda item and contained in document A73/CONF/1 1, Rev. 1.
This is just this page, okay?
I'll repeat that reference again. It's document A73 /CONF dot /1 Rev 1. I would like to draw the attention of the Assembly to the co-sponsors listed on the front of the conference paper. I have been informed that in addition to those member states appearing on the front of the conference paper, the following additional countries have informed the Secretariat that they would like to be recorded as co-sponsors. Those states are Cook Islands, Georgia, Kiribati, Nauru, Papua New Guinea, Philippines, Serbia, Tonga, and Uruguay. Any other countries that would like to co-sponsor the resolution should send an email to the Secretariat today by 1800 Central European Time. I'm going to repeat that. Any other countries that would like to co-sponsor the resolution should send an email to the Secretariat today by 1800 Central European Time at the following address: co-sponsorship@who.int. I'll repeat that address: co-sponsorship@who.int. In this way, your country will be reflected as a co-sponsor in the official records of this meeting. Therefore, you do not need to take the floor to state this. In a moment, I will put the draft resolution to the Assembly for adoption. But before I do, I would like to request that delegates only raise their hand at this point if you wish to object to the adoption of the resolution. So I'm going to repeat that for clarity. I would like to request that delegations only raise their hand at this point if you wish to object to the adoption of the resolution. Please do not raise your hand yet if you wish to make an explanation of position. I repeat, please do not raise your hand at this stage to make an explanation of position. So, let us turn to the draft resolution. Is the Health Assembly prepared to adopt the draft resolution as proposed? I'm just giving the Secretariat a few moments to double check. As I see no requests for the floor, I take it that there is no objection and the resolution is therefore adopted. me to say that?
Yes, because we said we'd give them an opportunity. Sorry, Syria. Well, this is an explanation of position. Explanation of position. Okay, so now is the time for explanations of position. Yes, read that.
Now is the time for explanations of position. However, before I open the floor to requests for explanations of position, and in the interest of time, I would like to strongly encourage member states wishing to provide an explanation of position to do so in writing by submitting their statement to the Secretariat for publication on the WHO website. So in the interest of time, I would strongly encourage member states wishing to provide an explanation of position to do so in writing by submitting their statement to the Secretariat for publication on the WHO website. May I remind delegations that all written statements, including explanations of position, will be posted in the language of submission on the governing body's web page of the 73rd World Health Assembly. They will also form part of the official records of the session.
Do we have any flags still up? Okay, so we give the floor to Syria first.
I understand that the delegation of Syria would like to take the floor. Please proceed. So what's happening with Syria?
Syria and Iran, they want to make explanations of position.
So will this be by video?
I don't know. Syria?
Syria, you have the floor, please.
Honorable delegates, we are waiting for the delegation of Syria, who I understand would like to take the floor. We understand that Syria is not quite ready, so we will proceed to the delegation of Iran, who I understand would like to take the floor. I turn the floor to Iran, please.
Madam President, you can hear me?
Yes, please proceed.
Thank you, Madam President. The Islamic Republic of Iran joined consensus on the draft resolution COVID-19 fund as a demonstration of our commitment to work collectively in the fight against the pandemic. We are dismayed by particular, that an opportune moment was missed to echo calls by many authoritative figures, including the United Nations Secretary General and the High Commission for Human Rights, for lifting of unilateral coercive measures, which are undermining international solidarity and hampering global cooperation against the virus. The unilateral coercive measures in the form of unlawful unilateral banking and financial sanctions are not violating basic human rights, in particular the right to health and to life, also pose a serious threat to global public health by hampering international cooperation in health sector. The U.S.
I'm sorry, the Honorable Delegate of Iran. We seem to be having some audio difficulties. Could you just give us a moment to resolve it? Please stay on the line.
Can I continue?
Honorable delegates, while we seek to resolve the audio situation, I propose that we take a 5-minute break, and please don't move far from your mics because we would resume shortly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, honorable delegates. We're ready to proceed. And this is what we propose with the concurrence of the Honorable Minister from Iran. We will have the Honorable Minister complete his statement. Now, we understand that there may still be some audio difficulties, but if honorable delegates are still having a difficulty hearing the Honorable Minister, we have agreed, given the rules of procedure, that he may submit a written statement of his oral statement that he's now giving, and that statement will still form a part of the official records of the meeting. So, Honorable Minister, if you're still on the line, we now give you the floor.
Thank you, Madam. Can I read that from the beginning?
Yes, please proceed.
Thank you, Madam President. The Islamic Republic of Iran joint consensus on the draft resolution COVID-19 response as a demonstration of our commitment to work collectively in the fight against the pandemic. We are dismayed, however, that an opportune momentum was missed to echo numerous calls by many authoritative figures and bodies, including the United Nations Secretary General and the High Commissioner for Human Rights, for lifting of unilateral coercive measures which are undermining international solidarity and hampering global cooperation against the viral spread. The unilateral coercive measures in the form of unlawful unilateral banking and financial sanctions are not only violating the basic human rights, in particular the right to health or to life, but also posing a serious threat to global public health by hampering international cooperation in health sector. The US must be held to account for continuing and intensifying their unlawful sanctions against Iran and other nations. Unilateral coercive measures and human solidarity are mutually exclusive. We urge all responsible states and international organizations to stand in the right side of the history by continuing to call for an end to unilateral sanctions as manifestations of crimes against humanity. My delegation requests that this explanation of position be reflected in the report of the proceedings. I thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. I now give the floor to the Honorable Delegate from Syria. You now have the floor. We are waiting for a connection from Syria. Please, may we have your indulgence? Honorable delegates, we are still trying to connect with Syria. We are attempting to reconnect.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Thank you very much. Okay.
Hello?
Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
I understand we have the Honorable Delegate of Syria on the line, so you have the floor. Thank you.
Can you hear me now, please?
We can hear you. Please proceed.
Thank you. سيد الرئيس انضمت سوريا للتوافق.
Madam Chair, Syria would like to join the consensus on this draft resolution based on our conviction that it is necessary to guarantee solidarity for the risks that all our countries are currently facing. We welcome the draft resolution and the call to intensify cooperation at all levels in order to be able to contain the COVID-19 pandemic. We also welcome the need for states to have the necessary facilities in terms of diagnostics, treatment and vaccinations in order to be able to promote the response to COVID-19 and the work to eliminate the obstacles. We regret that the resolution is not clearly requesting the removal of coercive unilateral measures that are applied to certain countries, which prevents them from acting effectively, because these have been imposed unilaterally and countries have insisted on keeping these sanctions, which affect the life of citizens in the countries targeted and affect their fundamental rights in this way. The prolongation of this unilateral and coercive extension of these measures during this global health crisis is a violation of the principles that the draft resolution is aimed to work for. And we have seen that the United States and the European Union have not followed the calls of the international community to strengthen capacities of states in order to be able to promote the response to COVID-19. So we would like to say that the best way of applying this resolution would be through an initiative that would invite the removal of all sanctions and measures taken by governments in order to be able to provide the results that we wish for. So we would like to call on the WHO to pay particular attention to the situation of populations living under these situations. Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and my apologies for the delays due to the technical problems. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I understand that there are no more speakers. So we shall now continue and consider together agenda item 4, invited speakers, and item 9, closure of the assembly. Now I shall invite the Health Assembly to consider the decision contained in document A73/35 to adopt the written silence procedure. That's the decision contained in document A73/35 to adopt the written silence procedure. Is the Assembly ready to adopt this decision?
Yes, it is.
Do I? I understand that I see no requests to take the floor. The decision is therefore adopted. Moving right along, let us continue. As provided in Article 14 of the WHO Constitution, the Health Assembly shall select the country in which the next session will be held. May I take that the Health Assembly agrees that the 74th World Health Assembly would be held in Switzerland? I see no objection. It is so decided. Honorable delegates, I shall once again hand over the floor to Madame Michelle. Now, let's see if I can get this right. Bocuse. I am making progress. Bocuse, Director General's Envoy of Multilateral Affairs. Madam, you have the floor. Thank you.
Madam President, Excellencies, yesterday we opened the Assembly, first of its kind in the organization's 73 years history, with words of inspiration and reassurance from global leaders, reaffirming their commitment to global health and to the important work